Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. We are going to time travel. It is July 2003. It's hot outside.
Mm-hmm.
You're walking into a Best Buy, or maybe, if you're lucky, a Tower Records is still open near you,
Mm-hmm.
and you walk past that new release rack.
And what do you see? You see 50 Cent everywhere.
Everywhere.
Mm.
Get Rich or Die Trying is just, it's dominating everything. You can't escape in day club.
No escape. And the South is getting really, really loud. You got Lil Jon and the East Side Boys making everybody scream, yeah, at
Yeah,
the top of their lungs.
exactly. But you are ignoring all of that. You are heading straight to the W section, or maybe the M section.
Because you're looking for the West Coast. And at this very specific moment in time, that whole section is having like a massive identity crisis. The death row dynasty of the 90s is, oh, it's
So
fractured.
it's over. And that G-funk sound, the high-pitched whistles, the classic Dr. Dre production, it's kind of fading into the rear view.
It is, but right there on that shelf, you see a CD with a cover that looks like a mugshot. And it has a title that makes absolutely zero apologies.
Oh.
It is not trying to be pop music. It is not trying to get on the radio.
Not at all. It's called Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta.
It's a title that's basically a warning label. And the artist is Mack 10. But, and this is the key, as we're going to find out, this is not just a Mack 10 solo album.
No, it's a manifesto. It's a statement.
It really is.
So today we are not just reviewing Mack 10's sixth studio album. We are performing a forensic examination of a time capsule.
I like that, a forensic examination.
We're going to deconstruct the business deal that allowed Mack 10 to beat the major labels at their own game. We're going to trace the family trees of every single artist on this thing because the connections, the nepotism, it is absolutely wild.
And we have to talk about the ghosts on this record, because when you really look at the dates, the release of this album lines up with a very specific and very tragic timeline for one of the guys featured.
This is the story of how Mack 10 tried to unite the West Coast, all the way from the Bay Area down to Inglewood under one single independent banner. This is the deep dive into Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta.
Let's get to work.
All right, so let's start with the architecture of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because in 2003, the music industry was bleeding out.
Oh, it was a mess. Napster had done its damage. CD sales were starting to get real wobbly.
But Mack 10 makes a move here that is just pure business strategy. It's brilliant.
It is, and to understand this album, you have to separate Mack 10 the rapper from Mack 10 the executive. They're two different people.
Okay, so let's start with the man himself.
Right. Dedrick Demon Rollison, born in Inglewood. By 2003, he is a certified veteran of the game.
He was not new to this at all.
Not even close. He bursts onto the scene in 1995 with his self-titled debut, Mack 10. Then he hits us with, based on a true story in 97, which, you know, you could argue is his classic.
I would, yeah.
The Recipe in 98, The Paper Route in 2000, and then Banger Ball in 2001. He was just churning out records.
He had a crazy work ethic.
A crazy work ethic. He was known for the Inglewood chant. He was 1/3 of the supergroup Westside Connection. The point is, he didn't need another gold plaque to prove he could rap. He needed equity. He needed ownership.
And that is where the chart performance of this album gets really interesting. I was looking at the numbers. It peaks at number 105 on the U.S. Billboard 200.
Right.
On the surface, that looks like a flop compared to his 90s numbers where he was cracking the top 20 easily.
But if you only look at the Billboard 200, you're missing the entire story.
Where do you have to look?
You have to look at the independent albums chart. On that chart, it hit number 2.
So why does that distinction matter so much?
Yeah.
Why should you, as the listener, care about the indie chart versus the main chart?
Because it all comes down to the margins. This is just economics 101 for the music business. This album was released through Who Bangin' Records. That's Mack's own label.
His own imprint.
Exactly. And it was in conjunction with a company called Bungalow Records. Now, Bungalow was this fascinating company started just a year before, in 2002, by a guy named Paul Ring. And they had a very specific, very smart distribution deal with Universal Music.
So break that down for us. What does that actually mean for Mack 10's bank account?
It means he's using the major machine.
Mm-hmm.
He's using Universal's trucks, Universal's relationships with retailers like Best Buy and Target. He's getting their shelf space.
Okay.
But he's keeping the independent ownership structure. See, when you sell a record as a major label artist, you might only make pennies on the dollar after you recoup all the costs.
Right after they take out video budgets, promotion.
Everything. But when you are the label owner who's just being distributed by a major, you're taking home a much, much larger slice of the pie. Selling, say, 50,000 copies as an indie can literally be more profitable than selling 500,000 copies as a major artist stuck in a bad deal.
So hitting number 2 on the indie chart means the cash flow was healthy. It didn't matter if he was beating 50 Cent on the pop charts.
Precisely. It was a survival strategy for the post-2000 rap economy. And it let him curate this album exactly the way he wanted. There was no A&R guy in a skyscraper in New York telling him he needed to make a pop song to compete with Ja Rule.
He was the boss.
He was the boss.
Which totally explains the title. Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta. If a major label was in charge, they would have forced a radio single with some R&B singer on the hook.
Oh, 100%. Mack 10 went the complete opposite direction.
He doubled down.
He doubled down on the street aesthetic, and to do that, he needed a very specific sound.
Okay, let's get into the soundscape then. Because 2003, it had a very particular sonic texture. We were moving away from the high-pitched G-funk synths of Dr. Dre and into something harder, grittier.
The stomp and clap era, that was the vibe that was emerging. It was less melodic, a lot more percussive. And the main architect of the sound on this album is a guy who honestly does not get enough credit in the history of West Coast hip-hop. Young Trey.
Trayvon Green. I was looking through the liner notes, and his name is Hip-Hop. It's just everywhere.
He is the absolute workhorse of this project. I mean, I want to list these out so you can really understand the magnitude of his contribution.
Go for it.
Young Trey produced the intro. He produced K to the MAC, Please Believe It, Get Yo Right On, Figaro Rita, Ain't Got a Penny to Give, Gather Round, Gangsta, The Weed Song, Livewire, Page I, and Rule the World.
That's basically the entire album.
It's the vast majority of it. And that's really significant because usually on these compilation-style albums, you farm out the beats to 10 different guys, right? You get a grab bag of sounds.
Right, one from Timbaland, one from Swizz Beatz, one from a local guy.
Exactly. But by leaning so heavily on Young Trey, Mack 10 made sure the album had this cohesive sonic identity. It all sounded like it came from the same place.
So how would you define that Young Tree sound on this record?
It's aggressive. It's super bass heavy. It's really stripped down. It fits the gutter part of the title perfectly.
It's not pretty music.
No, it's not trying to be. It's functional. It's music designed to rattle the trunk of your car. But Mack 10, being a smart executive, he balanced that rawness from Young Tree with a little bit of polish. And that's where we have to talk about Demitza.
Damian Young.
Oh.
Demitza. A huge name in LA radio at the time, right?
Massive. He was a key figure at Power 106, which was the biggest hip-hop station in Los Angeles. But he was also this weird producer-artist hybrid.
Yeah, he was always on his own track.
Always. He produced the lead single, Lights Out, and the track Dirt, and he's featured on both.
Demitza always had a cleaner, more radio-friendly sound compared to the underground guys. He knew how to make a hit.
Exactly. And notice how he inserts himself into the song. He's not just behind the boards, he's on the mic. That was the Demitza brand. He was the connector. He brought a level of industry gloss that made the album feel like a major release, even if the budget was independent.
And then, on the other end of the spectrum, you have King Tech.
Rod Saipan. I mean, that's legend status right there. Half of Sway and King Tech.
The Wake Up Show.
Come on. If you know hip-hop history, you know the Wake Up Show. That was the proving ground for lyricists. Eminem, Jay-Z, Tech N9, they all had to pass the Sway and King Tech test to get respect.
So getting him on the album was a big deal.
It's a huge nod to the purists. Having King Tech produce the SOOWOO remix is Mack 10 basically saying, look, I've got the radio guy with Demitza, I've got the street guy with Young Trey, and I've got the culture guy with King Tech. He covered all his bases.
Okay, but there is one other production credit on here that it completely blew my mind when I did the math. Track 18, In the Heart of the Ghetto, produced by a guy named Droopy.
This is one of my favorite details on the entire album. Droopy, born Earl Stevens Jr.
The son of the Bay Area legend E40.
Now, check this math with me. Droopy was born in 1988. This album, Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta, dropped in July 2003.
Wait a minute, so he was 15 years old.
15. A 15-year-old kid producing a track on a nationally distributed album featuring Mack 10 and Turf Talk.
That is absolutely insane. I mean, I know about nepotism in the music industry, but usually that means you get a job working in the mailroom or something.
Right, you're not getting a production credit.
This kid was handling the boards for a major release.
But here's the thing, it wasn't unearned. We have to look at Droopy's mini bio here. This kid had been in the studio since he was a toddler. He was literally singing backup on his father's album Federal when he was 5 years old.
No way.
Yes. He grew up in the Sick White It Records studio. He lived and breathed it. By the time he was a teenager, he was already part of a production team called the Pharmaceuticals.
So he was basically a veteran by the age of 15.
In terms of sheer studio hours, absolutely. And when you listen to that track, In the Heart of the Ghetto, it doesn't sound like a kid made it, but it does sound different from the rest of the album.
It sounds more frantic. It's faster.
That's it. You are hearing the birth of the hi-fi sound, the hi-fi movement, that whole high-energy, go dumb, ghost ride the whip culture. It was bubbling up in the Bay Area, but it hadn't really exploded nationally yet.
Not yet, no.
Droopy was tapping into that energy because he was a kid. He was living it in Vallejo. He brought a tempo and a kind of chaotic bounce to the album that the older producers just weren't doing.
It's like a passing of the torch moment happening right there in the liner notes.
That's exactly what it is. From the OG Mack 10 to the young prodigy Droopy, it's a snapshot in time.
Wow. Okay, now let's pivot from the beats to the voices. Because Mack 10 emptied his entire Rolodex for this project. The biggest flex on the whole album has to be the Westside Connection reunion on Lights Out.
It is a massive, massive flex. You got to remember, Westside Connection, the trio of Mack 10, WC, and Ice Cube, was a supergroup that didn't record together that often.
No, their albums were events.
They were. Their debut, Bowdown, was way back in 1996. Their second album, Terrorist Threats, wouldn't even drop until later in 2003. So Lights Out was like the appetizer for that.
And just getting Ice Cube in the booth for an independent compilation album is a big deal in itself.
O'Shea Jackson. Come on. By 2003, Cube was already a Hollywood mogul.
Oh yeah, he was deep in the movie game.
He'd already done Friday, Three Kings, Barbershop. He was busy. The fact that he showed up for Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta speaks volumes about the loyalty between him and Mack 10.
And then you've got WC, William Loshawn Calhoun Jr. Every single time he gets on a track, the whole energy just shifts.
He's the technician of the group. Cube brings the authority and that controlled rage. Mack brings the street credibility and the ad-libs. But WC brings the intricate rhyme schemes and that incredible stage presence. He's the glue that holds it all together.
But Lights Out also features another key voice from that era, Knoc-Turn'al.
Royal Roshum Harbor. I'm so glad you brought him up. Knoc-Turn'al is one of those names that perfectly defines the early 2000s and then just sort of vanished from the mainstream conversation.
He was everywhere for a minute there.
He was the secret weapon for Dr. Dre during the whole 2001 era. He wrote on The Watcher. He was featured on Bad Intentions. He had that smooth, almost lazy delivery that was the perfect contrast for those aggressive Dre beats.
The perfect hook man.
The perfect hook man. Having him on the hook for Lights Out gave it a commercial sheen. It was Mack 10 borrowing a little bit of that Dr. Dre and Aftermath magic for his own project.
Speaking of borrowing magic from other places, let's talk about the track Dirt. We have Matt Ken, we have Demitza, and we have Fat Joe.
Joey Crack. Joseph Antonio Cartagena from the Bronx. This feature is significant geopolitically.
Geopolitically. In hip-hop terms, you mean?
Absolutely. Think back to the mid-90s, the whole East Coast versus West Coast war. It was real, it was toxic, and it was dangerous.
For sure.
But by 2003, we were in the healing phase. The tensions had cooled down. Fat Joe represented the Bronx. He represented Terror Squad. He represented the massive Latino hip-hop audience on the East Coast. Mack 10 represented Inglewood and the West Coast streets.
So this track is like a diplomatic summit on wax.
It is, and it's also smart business.
Yeah.
Mack 10 knew that if he wanted this album to sell in New York bodegas, he needed a cosign from a New York king. Fat Joe was that cosign.
And Fat Joe was at the absolute peak of his powers in 2003.
Oh, massive. He was post What's Love and pre-Lean Back. He was a certified superstar. It really showed that Mack 10's reach went far beyond California.
He wasn't isolated in his own bubble.
No, he was thinking nationally. He was thinking globally.
And then, to bring it back home for the hook game, you bring in the one and only Butch Cassidy on Look at Us Now.
Danny Elliott means the second, long Booch royalty, and he is the first cousin of the late, great Nate Dogg.
You can hear the DNA in his voice.
You can really, really hear it. He has that same soulful baritone singing voice that sounds like it belongs in a church but feels like it belongs in a lowrider.
Yes.
You cannot have classic West Coast summer anthem without that specific vocal tone. Butch Cassidy had worked with Snoop. He'd worked with Ty Eastazaz. He brought that authentic G-Funk soul to the project.
We touched on Droopy's production, but the Bay Area's presence on this album is surprisingly heavy for what's essentially an LA artist's project. We have to talk about E40 on Double Fisted.
Earl T. Stevens, the ambassador of the Bay, the innovator. By 2003, E40 was already a living legend. In a Major Way came out in '95.
He founded Sickwides. It records he invented half the slang that rappers across the country were using.
But in 2003, he was in a weird spot career-wise. He was between his 90s peak and his massive mid-2000s resurgence.
Right, the whole tell me when to go hi-fi era hadn't quite happened yet on a national level.
Exactly. So Mack 10 caught him right in that middle period. And very importantly, E40 didn't come alone. The track also features a group called the Mossy.
Okay, who are the Mossy?
They are a group from Vallejo, California, consisting of Caveo, Muggsy, and Tack Dat Ass. They were the very first group on Sick Wit It Records, besides E40's own group, The Click.
So they go way back.
They go all the way back with 40. And putting them on Double Fisted is basically Mack 10 acknowledging that at that moment the Bay Area had the momentum. He didn't try to make them rap on a typical LA G-Funk beat. He let them bring that authentic Vallejo slang and that unique Vallejo bounce to his album.
And we can't forget Turf Talk on In the Heart of the Ghetto, the Droopy produced track.
DeMar Bernstein. He's E40's cousin. Turf Talk is... how do I even describe him? He's an acquired taste, for sure, but if you get it, you absolutely love it.
His delivery is so elastic. He squeaks, he growls, he goes off beat.
He was the wild card of the hyphy movement. He was known for having a completely unorthodox, almost unpredictable flow. Putting him on a track was a risk, because he's so weird with it, but it paid off. It added this chaotic, raw energy to the album that kept it from ever sounding monotonous.
Okay, we have to shift the tone here for a minute, because amidst all these smart business moves and these fun cross-regional collaborations, there is a very, very dark reality sitting right in the middle of this track list. Track number 7, Figaro Rita.
Yeah.
Performed by B. Brazy.
This is where the gutter and gangsta part of the album title gets very, very literal. We need to talk about Bruce Anthony Parrish Jr., known to the world as B. Brazy.
Tell us about him. Who was he?
He wasn't just a rapper who talked about gang life. He was a reputed, documented member of the Denver Lane Bloods. In the early 90s, he was part of that groundbreaking Banging on Wax project.
Oh, wow. The Bloods and Crips album?
The one and only. He was in the Bloods and Crips group and also the Damu Ritas. That project was so controversial because it took real active gang members and put them in the recording booth.
So he was a pioneer of that reality rap style.
He really was. And the timeline of this album's release is just chillin'. Ghetto, Gutter, and Gansta dropped on July 22, 2003.
Okay.
B. Brazy was killed on May 9, 2003.
Wow. Just 2 months before the album came out.
2 months. He was at the Sandman Motel in Inglewood. From what the reports say, it was an ambush. He was shot by members of a rival gang, Florence 13.
I read some of the reports on that. They said he managed to stumble out of the motel room after he was shot.
The reports state that he made it outside, and he was yelling, CK for life, before he finally collapsed. Now, CK usually stands for Crip Killer, but in the context of the war with Florence 13, a Hispanic gang, the dynamics were incredibly complex and racialized. But the point is, he died claiming his set. He died exactly the way he lived in his lyrics.
And Mack 10 kept his track on the album.
Figurita, produced by Young Trey. And it's a solo track. Mack 10 isn't even on it. He gave B. Brazy the entire stage. By keeping that song on the album and releasing it so soon after the murder, it functions as a memorial. It's a posthumous tribute.
It completely changes how you listen to the song. When he's on there rapping about threats, about looking over his shoulder,
Yeah.
It's not entertainment. It feels like a deposition.
It grams the entire album in a grim reality. It reminds the listener that this gangsta lifestyle isn't a costume you put on. For these guys, the stakes were literally life and death. It casts a heavy shadow over the whole project.
So Mack 10 wasn't just looking back at the fallen. He was also trying to build an army for the future. We see this group, Da Hood, credited all over the album.
This was Mack 10's attempt at empire building. You have to remember, in the early 2000s, every major rapper needed a group. It was the thing to do. Nelly had the Saint Lunatics, Eminem had D12, 50 Cent had G-Unit.
Everyone had a crew.
Everyone had a crew. So Mack 10 formed Da Hood.
Who was in the ranks of that crew?
Well, you had Mack 10 as the general, of course. Then you had a guy named DiBiase, born Andrew Price II, also known as YG Soprano. He was a writer and a vocalist all over the album.
Okay.
You had Scoop Delania, Jimmy Tucker. He provided a lot of the vocals on tracks like Promise to Be a Hustler. And you had K-Mac.
K-Mac actually gets his own solo track, too, K to the M-A-C.
Which is really rare. Usually the underlings in the crew don't get their own solo tracks on the Boss's album. But K-Mac born Kelly Garman, he was already seasoned. He was a member of the West Coast group The Comrades, who had a pretty big hit with Homeboys back in the day.
Ah, okay, so he had his own credentials.
Mack 10 trusted him to carry a whole song by himself. But even beyond Da Hood, the group that really dominates the features list is the Young Hogs.
They are everywhere. I'm looking at the list. Ain't Got a Penny to Give, Gather Round, Gangsta, The Weed Song, Live Wire.
They are all over this thing.
Who were they?
They were a crew from Compton, and the roster was deep. TJ Santana, Killa Kane, who also went by Casey Snow T-Mac Johnson, Young Shame, Taboo, or Tabusta. But again, just like with B. Brazy, we run into the tragedy of the streets.
What do you mean by that?
Two other members, Nutty Nutso and Time Bomb, are listed in the album credits. Both have since passed away. I don't have the exact dates of their passing in front of me, but when you look back at this album now, it feels like a high school yearbook where half the class didn't make it to the 10-year reunion.
That's a really powerful way to put it.
The Young Hogs brought that raw, unpolished energy to the album. They sound hungry on these tracks. They sound like they're rapping for their lives. And in a way, they probably were. Mack 10 was giving them a platform, a real chance to get out of that situation.
And he kept it local, too. We also have the Reservoir Dogs on here.
From Inglewood, Mack's own backyard, the group was Stoop, All Day, and Cola Kenrick Frelix. They're featured on Page I and the SOOWO remix.
It's like he was trying to build a United Nations of LA street rap.
He really was. He was trying to cover every single block. He had the Compton guys with the Young Hogs. He had the Inglewood guys with the Reservoir Dogs. He had the Long Beach connection with Butch Cassidy. And then he reached all the way up to the Bay for the Mossy.
And you still got Money Grip on here.
From the group Tie Trap, he's featured on Please Believe It and Gangsta.
And a guy named J-Man on Rule the World.
James Ransom, another one of those killer Young Tree productions. I mean, these are the deep cuts. These are the local legends who got a real shot at the big time because Mack 10 decided to put them on his album.
I want to talk about a specific track that I think just perfectly captures the era, the Weed Song.
Oh, of course. Every single hip-hop album in the early 2000s required a marijuana anthem. It was mandatory. If you didn't have a smoking song on your album, you weren't finished yet.
And this one is 5 minutes and 9 seconds long. It's an odyssey.
It's an epic. It features the Young Hogs, Scoop Delania, and DiBiase. It's a massive posse cut. And it's slow, it's melodic, it's hazy. It serves a really important functional purpose on the album.
How so?
You have all these aggressive, high-tempo tracks about gang banging and street politics and low riding. You need a moment to just breathe. The Weed Song is the intermission. It's the smoke break.
And then right after that, you get a track like Get Your Ride On.
The car culture anthem. Performed by the Who Bangin' Gangstas, which was basically just another name for his whole collective. This is pure hydraulic music.
Oh, yeah.
Mack 10 knew his audience inside and out. He knew people were going to be listening to this album in a '64 Impala or a customized SUV with giant rims. He gave them the perfect soundtrack for the car show.
There's one more piece to this puzzle that we haven't mentioned yet. This wasn't just a CD.
Right. You're talking about the DVD, the bonus DVD era.
The bonus DVD.
This was a huge marketing tactic in the early 2000s to try and combat piracy. Napster and Kazaa and LimeWire were just eating into album sales. So the labels started saying, hey, don't download the illegal MP3s for free. Buy the physical disc, and you'll get all this exclusive video footage.
So what was on the DVD for this album?
It featured music videos and live performances for tracks like On and Crackin', Her Bangin', some footage from a Live at the House of Blues show, and a track called Connect Game.
So it added value.
It added a ton of value, and it proved authenticity. Seeing these guys on stage, seeing them in the studio, seeing them in the hood, it validated the lyrics. It showed the consumer, look, these guys aren't just actors playing a role. This is their real life.
So let's zoom out. We're looking back at 2003, at Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta. When we analyze Mack 10's entire career, where does this specific album sit?
I think it's a major pivot point for him. It's the moment Mack 10 fully transitioned from being Ice Cube's partner from Westside Connection to being a true mogul in his own right.
He became the boss.
He became the boss.
Yeah.
He orchestrated a complex distribution deal. He managed this massive roster of unruly and talented artists. He bridged the gap between warring regions like LA and the Bay. And he put out a product that was unapologetically, authentically West Coast during a time when the West Coast was really struggling for national relevance.
It's a time capsule. I keep coming back to that phrase.
It really is. If you want to know what the streets of California sounded like and looked like and felt like in that specific summer of 2003, this is before the smartphone, before social media, right at the dawn of the hyphy movement, this album is the historical document.
And it honors the fallen. You have B. Brazy, you have Nutty Nutso, you have Time Bomb. Their voices are preserved on this record forever.
Exactly. They live on through the WAV files.
So here's my final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Oh, look.
We live in an era of features now where artists just email verses to each other. They never meet. They never even get in the same room.
Right, it's all digital.
Ghetto, Gutter, and Gangsta feels like everyone was in the room together. There's a chaotic, organic, almost dangerous energy to it. So my question is, could an album like this even exist today? Could one independent artist pull together this many different, sometimes warring factions onto one cohesive project? Or was this the last of a dying breed?
That is the question, isn't it? The Unity album might just be a lost art form. It required a level of street respect and physical presence that's really hard to replicate in the digital age.
Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Go spin the album, check the credits, and respect the history.
Peace.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.